I played quite a bit with the Hasselblad X2D, and there's a lot to love about that camera. The image quality is fantastic. It's got a really sexy body and a very simple but easy to use touchscreen interface. But you know, Hasselblad was really marketing this camera as not only a landscape camera, but also a walk around street camera. And unfortunately, there's some things that really held it back. I mean, poor autofocusing performance, a lack of more advanced controls and customizability. Well, look at this brand new camera. This is the Hasselblad X2D II. It's really sexy. Look at this gray finish, and it seeks to fix a lot of those issues we had before. I'm Chris Niccolls. This is PetaPixel. Let's get to it. At first glance, this camera does look a lot like the original X2D, but we now have this beautiful graphite gray finish. I really like it. It's understated, and it sets off that gold button particularly nicely. We also have a new texture here on the grip. I don't know, it reminds me of elephant skin. I've been told that it's actually not pulled from real elephants, so I mean, that's nice from a conservation standpoint. But beyond just the overall aesthetics, there's actually some really notable changes here to the control scheme. So Hasselblad has made a concerted effort to improve how much you can customize these cameras. It was always good before, but we just have more controls now. So the front control dial, you've got a push-in function. They've been customized. I like that. On the back of the grip now, we have a dedicated quick menu button, but again, you can change that if you want to as well. But by far the biggest improvement, one that I'm really appreciating, is we now have this 5-axis joystick on the back. And this also has a press-in customizable button as well. And this actually makes a really big difference to the operation of the camera. So first off, it gives nice haptic feedback as you're using it. I can use it to navigate menus, but I can also use it to move my autofocusing point around. Previously, what we would do is use the excellent touchscreen to change the autofocusing point, but that means taking your eye away from the EVF, you know, touching the screen somewhere, bring it back up. Here now, I can just operate this much like a more professional mirrorless camera, keep my eye on the EVF, move that focusing point around, and I'm just finding it really convenient. So let's talk about displays on this camera because they've changed quite a bit. So first off, the EVF, really nice eye cup. You'll notice there's no physical diopter. That's actually all done in the menu, but it's slick, it works well, and then there's no way to accidentally change it when you're shooting. This is a 5.76 million dot EVF, and it supports a full P3 color space, which is important when we talk about the HDR photography in just a bit. We have another nice upgrade here with this back panel though. So this is a 2.36 million dot back panel display, and as you can see, it tilts out here. Nice vertical control for waist level. I can tilt it down if I want to shoot over a crowd. It doesn't articulate fully to the side. It's just this vertical orientation. As far as storage goes, it's very similar to the previous camera. This is still using CF Express Type B cards in here, just the single card slot. We have that 1 terabyte SSD built into the camera. That's really cool. It's a lot of storage. It's reliable. It's fast. If you forget a card at home or something, no big deal. Or you can just use it as backup or overflow. So I'm noticing some nice quality of life improvements here on the camera as I go through it. So first off, the doors that cover up our ports and our memory card, I mean, they look very similar to what we had before. We got these nice rubber gaskets to keep some of the weather out of there and stuff. But what's interesting is they actually now have magnetic locks, which is to say that it's not actually locking it in place, but when you click these shut, they kind of want to pop into place, and they have a little bit more resistance from popping open when you don't want them to. So I do really appreciate that. Now, it's the same battery type that we had on the X2D, but I am finding that there is actually a little bit less battery life listed than what we had before. So on the X2D camera, we had 420 CEPA rated shots roughly. On this, we're down to 327. So it looks like we get a bit more power draw out of this camera than we had before. So you might want to have those extra batteries on the X2D II, which honestly sounds like a Star Wars character. So the X2D II has a leaf shutter in here. I mean, with XCD lenses, I can get up to 4,000th of a second, and because it's a leaf shutter, I can sync flashes to it. That's always been a really nice advantage with this system. But I'm shooting Levi here. I like the three-dimensionality of like the flowers, the color. He's a fantastic model. You look like you're straight out of like a contemporary cologne ad. It's gonna be great. But I'm not shooting at any sort of fast shutter speeds here. We're shooting around f4, f5.6. I kind of want to have the flowers with color recognizable but not totally in focus. Really, I'm using the flash to maximize the 100 megapixels that we have in this sensor. So I've just brought my Westcott FJ200 flash, the rapid box switch Octa S. It's nice, small, compact, really easy to use, and I can fire off with the wireless trigger here. And getting some shots here, as you can see, I just love the detail that I'm getting. It's giving us that fill. I get the sun making that rim light on his shoulders, so it's really easy, really portable. If you want to check out an FJ200 and a rapid box switch Octa S for yourself, click the link in the description below or visit fjwestcott.com. We love using their gear. That's why they're PetaPixel's preferred lighting partner. So I know what you're thinking. We've seen this 100 megapixel sensor before. It's a great sensor, lots of image quality. Yes, that's true, and it is a known commodity, but Hasselblad has done a few tweaks here on the X2D version 2. So first off, they've tweaked the base ISO a little bit. They've gone from 64 down to 50, and that unlocks just a little bit more dynamic range. They're advertising a third of a stop increase. Not a big deal when you're already talking 15 stops, but it's always nice to have as much dynamic range as possible. And yes, all the lenses are expensive, but they're awesome, and you do get really good detail out of these files. But one of the things you'll find with 100 megapixel sensors is a lot of that detail can be lost if you don't have a stable shooting platform. Any motion blur, even very minor, can impact your overall image quality. So that's why the X2D had image stabilization, and the X2D version 2 goes even further. So of course, they're saying 10 stops of image stabilization separated in the center of the image and then 8 stops towards the corners. Basically what the camera does is actually connect to your phone through the Focus 2 app, and then it actually sees GPS coordinates and adjusts for like the rotation of the earth and stuff like that. I don't know about all that, but this is what I will say. It's definitely far more stable than the original X2D. Now, Hasselblad does say that multi-second exposures are possible, and our very own Jeremy Gray got a beautiful shot around 2 seconds, but I still don't think it quite maximizes the 100 megapixel resolution. I was certainly able to shoot 1/10 of a second shots, something that I would never do on a 100 megapixel sensor, and still get fantastic results. Okay, let's talk about autofocus next, because this is something the original X2D had issues with. With the firmware update, they added face and eye detect, and that helped out a lot if you're shooting portraits, but still, autofocusing was slow, somewhat unreliable. Sometimes you get eyebrows and stuff. So the X2D II has now added some subject detection modes. So of course, you got face and eye, and it's actually doing a really good job. You can see the portraits of Levi here. It's just really locking onto the eye where it should be doing that. And I'm finding that it's picking up people's faces at fairly moderate distances. If they're really small in the frame, it still struggles, but it has obviously been taught to detect a person's head, even if they're turned away, and as well go right to the eye or face if it can see it. But they've also added some other subject detection modes. You also get cats and dogs, like pet mode, and you also get vehicles. And so this is a really nice improvement to the overall experience. Now, I will say the autofocus is still a little bit slow, it hunts a little bit, but it's more reliable with those detection modes. Regardless, with Hasselblad now incorporating phase detect and LiDAR to get better focusing, this is a big step up from its predecessor. The last thing I want to talk about is frame rate. So this actually has a drop in frame rate from the X2D. It's going from roughly 3.3 frames per second to 3 frames per second. I mean, okay, not a big deal. I guess there's more processing involved with the subject detection autofocusing, but just keep in mind, we're still at that relatively slow burst rate. So if you're shooting street photography, portraits, it's fine, but if you're looking for any faster action, it's gonna let you down. So for today's shoot, we have Levi Hallwell behind the camera helping us out. We always appreciate his expertise and his eye. And so let's talk about something here, because I think he's dealing with high contrast right now with this shadow and light. And that reminds me then of one of the new features on this new X2D II, which is their new HDR solution. It's HNCS HDR, Hasselblad Natural Color Solution, High Dynamic Range. Now, we always appreciate when camera companies are trying to get us better HDR photography, for display on things like iPhones, iPads, Instagram devices, things like that. It's really nice to have that HDR support, and it's something we now take for granted when we shoot smartphones. So what Hasselblad's doing is a little bit different. They're actually extending the color gamut to the P3 wide color gamut range, and this promises a lot of improvements in dynamic range, not only for JPEGs and HEIFs, but also for RAW photography as well. And so the first mode I want to talk about is actually you can get HDR JPEGs out of this camera, straight out of camera, and those will display in things like iPhones and iPads, with fairly modern capabilities perfectly well. You'll actually get that full color gamut. It's going to be really beautiful to look at. You can also get support for this in Adobe Lightroom as well when you're shooting these JPEGs. Now, if you shoot HEIFs, it's a little bit different. I mean, HEIFs don't technically, according to Hasselblad, provide all the support for the color space if you're going to certain iPad or iPhone devices. They're basically saying you're going to get support for this when you're looking at the displays on the camera itself, which are all compatible with this wider color gamut space, as well as when you're using the Focus 2 software on your, for example, mobile device. Now, if you want to have maximum dynamic range and ability to push, you can shoot RAW files, and it does support this. However, it only supports it right now through Hasselblad's Focus software. And Hasselblad's always been quite dependent on their own proprietary software. It is really nice for tethering. The tools are not bad, and it works much more stably and fast than it used to. But you are dependent on that if you want to get maximum dynamic range out of these RAW files in HDR mode. And Hasselblad is promising about up to 4 stops improvement over their older RAW files. There are a lot of caveats though on when you can or cannot use HDR. If you're shooting continuous burst rates, if you're shooting bracketing modes, if you're shooting full manual mode, if you're using Nikon compatible flashes, stuff like that, you actually lose a lot of this capability to shoot any of this HDR photography. But look, we love having this HDR capability, be able to see those brighter highlights and a lot of detail in the shadows in a way that much more fits closely how our eye would actually see the scene. And so if you're willing to work within the constraints and you're displaying to these compatible devices, you can also harness this extra dynamic range. So if I come back to our original query about the Hasselblad X system of cameras, Hasselblad pushed the X2D very hard as this sort of companion camera you could wear around your shoulder, take shots, get street shots, get fast action, but I always felt that it was lacking. It's quite a poor tool for that, and I really relegated it more to a lightweight camera that I could take for architecture shots or landscape shots, that kind of thing. But now that I've used the X2D II, I feel like this is a far truer example of what Hasselblad was going for, because this camera actually has some very robust updates that make it far more of a pleasure to use. And I mean, look, Hasselblad have still given us an incredibly beautiful camera to wear around our shoulder, but I just feel like a lot of the improvements are far more tangible and useful now. So I like the grip and I like the feel of the camera. It's even ever so slightly lighter than before. This 5-axis joystick makes a huge difference, though, the functionality of being able to focus quickly, navigate my menus, and keep my eye in the action. And as always, we're getting incredible image quality. I do also feel that the autofocus is substantially improved, and that's really helped a lot in making this a more enjoyable experience, because the X2D was a fairly low bar as far as autofocusing goes, and I just found it a bit more reliable, to be able to engage onto people's faces or get eyes properly in focus. The subject detection modes simplify everything a little bit, and the only improvements I really want to see, it still hunts a bit, it's still a little bit slow for sure, but I'd also like to have more control over where it actually tracks as far as zones and areas, be able to pick up eyes without having to move my focusing point all the way around the frame. A little bit more availability there would improve the experience, but I gotta say, this is by far the most pleasurable experience I've had using an X series camera, and I just think it's a far more versatile tool now that I might really want to take doing travel photography or getting pictures of pets and kids on family stuff, or be able to do serious portrait stuff on the street. I think it's actually a really nice improvement that we've seen. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I mean, do leave comments below. Let us know what you think. Any feedback you have, we always love to have that. We're also going to talk about this camera on the PetaPixel podcast, it's on this exact same channel, or you can listen to it on all your favorite podcasting apps. And do consider getting a PetaPixel.com membership, $3 a month, $30 a year. You get huge discounts on our merch store, as well as KH.com. You get access to all of the JPEG and RAW sample galleries that we shoot with the gear that we test. You also get to peruse the website ads-free and more. I mean, there's so many benefits, and most importantly, it really helps us do a lot of fun projects that we want to tackle outside of just the regular camera gear reviews. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon with more on PetaPixel.